Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Wise Decision Maker Show, where we help you make the wisest and most profitable decisions. Today, we'll talk about the wisest decisions on how to maximize hybrid work productivity, specifically what employees should do at home. Let's talk about hybrid work and its productivity benefits. Now, we have research that managers have an increasingly positive outlook on hybrid work productivity, regardless of what you might have heard about all the managers trying to force their employees back to the office. That's actually not the case when you look at the data. So there was a University of Birmingham study of 597 managers that found that 52% agree that work from home improves employee concentration. Over 59% agree that work from home increases productivity. Over 62% agree that work from home increases motivation, and over three-quarters believe flexible working increases productivity. So clearly, and a bunch of the rest believe it has no impact, and so only a small minority believe that it decreases productivity, decreases concentration, decreases motivation. So clearly, we see that managers increasingly believe that work from home improves productivity. And especially line managers, the people who are closest to the employees. So line managers are more likely to see flexible work as a performance enhancer. That's 71% plus. Where senior managers are still more likely than average, but quite a little bit less likely than line managers. So 65% of them see flexible work as a performance enhancer. So that means that we need to spend a little bit more time educating senior management on the benefits of flexible work. And it's a little bit, not surprising in terms of senior management not being as close in touch with the kind of work that the rank and file staff are doing, who line managers are directly overseeing. And we know that that hybrid work, flexible work, has a positive impact on employee performance. So managers more broadly need to be educated about that, but they're already increasingly realizing this. But how do we maximize hybrid work productivity? How do we determine what kind of tasks are best done in the office versus what kind of tasks are best done at home? We know that three-quarters of US companies are adopting the hybrid work model, so it's critical for the success of both individual companies, our bottom lines, and the economy as a whole for us to figure out what are the best tasks to be done at home and in the office. Now, why don't we just let the rank and file employees and their line managers figure it out, right? That seems like a natural question. Well, because both my extensive research and my experience helping 22 companies transition to hybrid work and remote work shows that employees often fail to actually maximize productivity, and they need best practices to ensure success. There are lots of mistakes that they make in making hybrid work. It's because they lack understanding of what is best done in the office and what is best done at home. Not due to laziness, not due to inefficiency. And it's not necessarily the employees who are not realizing this. Often it's the line managers, supervisors who are not realizing this and who are trying to get their employees to do the wrong tasks in the office and the wrong tasks to do at home. They're trying to shoehorn traditional methods of leadership, of collaboration, what they're comfortable with, into hybrid settings, and that just doesn't work very well. So the result is low productivity, engagement, and morale, which harms the company's bottom line and undermines employee well-being and career success. So, what is the basic principle here? Well, we really need to think about minimizing commuting time. We need a hybrid work model that tries to focus on doing as much as possible to minimize employee commuting time. Office visits must be for a specific purpose because commuting time is just empty, wasteful time. So commuting time involves a lot of costs of time, money, and stress. And we see that there's a Hubble survey, for example, where 79% of respondents cite commuting time, the lack of a commute, as their favorite part of working from home. And another survey from Zebra shows that over a third of Americans, 35%, are willing to take a pay cut for a shorter commute. And of those, 89% are willing to accept an up to 20% pay cut, which is pretty huge. Commuting time takes a while. So the average commuting time is over half an hour each way, so over an hour per day. In larger cities, 10% of Americans who commute over an hour each way. That's a lot of time wasted. And so we want to be thinking about how to address this problem in terms of time, but also in terms of money. So there was a Flex Jobs analysis. That's a company, Flex Jobs, that analyzed this question and found that there's 12,000 that can be garnered in savings per year by working full-time remotely. And how's that coming about? What's the 12,000 from? Well, there's savings on transportation expenses, gas, car maintenance, parking, that's expensive. Then there's savings on all the types of professional clothing and eating out that you have to do when you're in the office. And there's, of course, some additional costs when you're working remotely, like utilities and cooking, but these are small potatoes compared to in-office work. Now, we know that commute time harms productivity. So peer-reviewed research links longer commutes to lower job satisfaction, increased strain, worse mental health. Bad for employees, bad for productivity, bad for retention. And there is a study by Oxford University which found that happy workers are 13% more productive. And the University of Chicago study found that a third of the time saved from commuting, saved from a lack of a commute, is devoted to working on the primary jobs. That's over 40 minutes per week. That's a lot of time. Now, given that, what should employees do at home? And what are the right things to do at home so that we don't make them commute to the office for no good reason? Focus tasks. When you're doing focus tasks, like let's say you're writing a report, you're doing if you're a designer, doing some design, working on marketing copy, working on programming, that's best done at home, no question. There are fewer distractions. The vast majority of people, it's best done at home because of this increased focus. And by the way, I'm talking here in all cases about the vast majority of people, something like over 80-90%. This is the case. But for some people, of course, have different preferences. They'll prefer to work in the office. But take it that 80-90% of the people, for focused tasks, that's best done at home. What about asynchronous collaboration and communication? Things like email. They take up a lot of time. So emails, other message processing, doing some various other tasks like editing articles, editing programming, things like that you collaborate with others but asynchronously. So let's say you do some editing on a design, then it's time for somebody else to do some editing on design. These sorts of asynchronous collaboration and asynchronous communication, there's McKinsey analysis that 28% of the time of average knowledge workers is taken up by email. So that's a lot of time that people spend just on email, and it doesn't count Slack and so on. We don't need to commute to do email tasks. We don't need to commute to do asynchronous collaboration, like when you're doing some editing on an article or a graphic design and somebody else is doing some editing, or you're doing some editing on computer code and somebody else is doing some editing on computer code. There's no reason to do that in the office. That's best done at home. And finally, virtual meetings. So there's no reason for people to come in to the office to sit in their cubicle or in their open office, especially, that's bad, and do a virtual meeting when they're distracting others by talking. Now, there's a Slack survey that found that 2 hours a day on average are spent in virtual meetings for the typical knowledge worker. And Stuart Templeton, who is the head of Slack in UK, said that commuting to the office just for video calls is a terrible use of the office. It undermines employee productivity and happiness. So, we can, of course, think about alternative workspaces for non-remote workers. So if there are some workers who have bad home offices, then employers should provide an alternative workspace for employees who don't have that quiet, comfortable home office, or who have a difficulty drawing work-life boundaries. For example, they can provide office space in their office, so employees can come to the office if they need to, do some work there, like on email and so on, or they can provide co-working spaces. So whatever that is. But the large majority of employees, I can guarantee to you, will not take advantage of this because they much prefer to work from their home office. So maximizing hybrid employee productivity is something that we really need to think about, and that involves making sure that office-based activities, when you're requiring employees to come to the office, that these activities outweigh the burden of commuting. Because most activities that an employee does, if email takes up 28% of their worker time and average workers are for 2 hours a day in meetings, considering that's, out of an 8-hour workday, that's 2 hours. And so that's another 25% of their time. That's already over half their time. And a bunch of the rest of the time, 30% or so, 30 to 40% is taken up by the focused work, like writing reports, doing designs, writing articles, writing copy. Only 10% of the time is taken up by more intense collaborative tasks, 10 to 20% of the time. So most activities, the large majority, are better done at home. These focused tasks, asynchronous communication, and video meetings. So the substantial majority of time should be spent working remotely. Something like only 1 day a week on average is the right time for people to be in the office. And that's how you maximize hybrid work productivity, through figuring out what is the best work to do at home. I hope you've enjoyed this episode of the Wise Decision Maker Show. Please make sure to subscribe to the show wherever you check this out, and make sure to leave a review for the show. It really helps us improve the show, and it helps other people discover the show. My name is Dr. Gleb Tsipursky. I'm the CEO of Disaster Avoidance Experts, the future of work consultancy that sponsors the Wise Decision Maker Show, and I look forward to seeing you in the next episode of the Wise Decision Maker Show. In the meantime, the wisest and most profitable decisions to you, my friends.